Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Build, Grow, Sustain, a model for travel training program success, presented by Easter Seals Project Action. All participants will be in a listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions during today's presentation. If you should need assistance during the conference, please press star, then 0. This conference is being recorded. I'd now like to turn the call over to our session moderator, Christian Borrico.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This session will address promising practices to build, grow, and sustain travel training programs. We are very excited to have some leaders in the travel instruction field with us today who will share their methods for program growth. Following their prepared remarks, we will have some time for opening up the phone lines and the chat window for any questions that you may have. Before we begin the session, I'd just like to get a few quick housekeeping things out of the way. The PowerPoint presentation for today's session can be found on the event website, which you can access by visiting www.projectaction.org and clicking on the link Build, Grow, and Sustain a Model for Travel Training Program Success. We will also put this link in the chat field momentarily. This event is also being recorded and transcribed. You can visit our website at projectaction.org in about 30 days, and you'll be able to download a full PDF copy of the transcript. We're also providing closed captioning for this event. To open your captioning window, please hit Control and F8, or you can enable it by clicking on the window menu and then show closed captioning. You can size that window to fit within your webinar screen, so they'll appear right alongside the slides. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters. We have Julie Rosecrans, who is a training and technical assistance specialist with Easter Seals Project Action. In addition to conducting trainings and providing technical assistance on accessible transportation topics, Julie also works with the National Center for Mobility Management, of which Easter Seals is a partner. She previously worked as a travel training program manager for Central Maryland Regional Transit in Laurel, Maryland, and she is a graduate of the University of Maryland. Michael Vandercreek is the Manager of Mobility Management at the Regional Transportation Authority in Chicago. In this role, he manages the RTA's Travel Training Program, the RTA's Transit Access Advisory Committee, and the organization's Mobility Management Programming. Michael is also a board member of the Association of Travel Instruction. The travel training program Michael manages serves the city of Chicago and 6 surrounding counties in northeastern Illinois. Michael received his master's degree in social work in 1999 and is a licensed clinical social worker. We also have Robin Bernardi joining us today. Robin is the Director of Travel Training with MTM Inc. She oversees national travel training operations and provides direct oversight for the multiple MTM on-the-move assessment and travel training activities throughout the country. For the past 8 years, Robin has worked in a variety of settings, all focused on increasing the independence of individuals with disabilities. Robin holds a Master's of Social Work degree. Now I'd like to turn it over to Julie.
Thanks, Christian, and thank you everybody for being involved in today's call. It's always great when we get a room full, whether in person or on a webinar like this, a room full of travel instructors and mobility management people together to share ideas and learn together. So our webinar today is called Build, Grow, and Sustain, a model for travel training program success. And there's a short graphic on the screen here that says Build, Grow, and Sustain. It looks like building blocks. It's easy to talk about a 3-step approach to building something like a program that you put your energy and years of work and dedication and passion into. It's easy to look at a graphic like this and think, okay, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3. But I thought I would start today just by saying that so many programs out there, many of the folks on this call today who run those programs, refine their programs over long periods of time. And I also like to think about these words, build, grow, and sustain, in kind of a circular model as well, like the recycling logo, you know, where if you build something and you grow it and it becomes a bit sustainable, that then leads to, you know, new opportunities and clever ways to grow your program over periods of time. There are a lot of leaders in the field on this webinar today, and for both the leaders in the field and people who have been around a while and folks who may be new to travel training and travel instruction, I'd like to ask you to think about a question to start this webinar off, and that is, how do you define your success? We can think about success in a variety of ways. There are a lot of different ways we can say what was successful and or what we're working toward to achieve success. But as we go along, just kind of think about success, what it means to you, because this webinar is not a cookie cutter webinar to say, here, do these things and it'll make your program successful. But we're here today to share ideas. We have Robin and Michael, some great leaders in the field, to share some ideas of what they're doing at their programs, and hopefully you can take away something back to your transit agency, your school, or whatever setting you might be training in or thinking about training in as well. So travel instructors really do make a difference, and I know we might say that the work we do makes a difference, but it really, really does. I think it's important to think of ways to build your work and to grow the work that you're doing, because it really does make that difference. You all on this webinar and the staff that you supervise or the people in your agencies are empowering people to live their lives with greater independence, to have a sense of choice in where they go, who they see, what place in the community they choose to be a part of. And so I love this quote from Edgar Allan, who's the founder of Easter Seals. And it says, "Your life and mine shall not be valued by what we take, but by what we give." And again, it might be simple to think, oh yes, it's just part of our job, it's part of what I do, going out and training people and teaching skills and getting people to ride the bus. But it really is about what you give. And to be able to continue to grow programs, this webinar will address the use of the practices that the three of us will be talking about today, taking that giving piece and turning it into growth. So I like to break it down by kind of saying that there's a few tenets of program success, and all of these come from the work that Project Action does in working with various transit agencies and schools and travel training programs across the country and in Canada. Also, a bit of it is my own experience as a former travel training program manager. So let's talk about a few important things that we should keep in mind as we think about whether you're starting a new program or growing one that's been around for 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years or longer. Many travel training programs out there utilize some of these approaches to growing and even sustaining their work. And Michael will talk a little bit about that sustainability piece, which is really important to think about. So all of these are important to address. We have funding, achieving initial funding and continued funding, community buy-in, marketing and outreach, delivering high quality training, and producing strong deliverables from that training. So I'll start by addressing funding. There's lots of communities across the country, and there's lots of webinars out there and different things where you can learn about funding to start programs. So I'm going to speak mostly here toward thinking of creative ways to sustain the programs you've already started. So there's lots of communities across the country that have adopted unique approaches to funding travel training programs, or maybe even receiving small pieces of money to do something unique in their region. The first thing to think about that hopefully comes to mind is network with other programs out there. Travel trainers are some of the most generous people that I've met. People like to share ideas. Many of us think, why reinvent the wheel? Let's share resources, share best practices, because we all recognize the work that we're doing is really important. So you can network with other programs. Think outside of the box as well. So as funding streams change, what you started with for your funding might not be what you have now. For transit agency programs, look beyond your New Freedom and your $5310 if need be. Many of the programs out there might have started with New Freedom money, but in order to kind of continue and grow and evolve with the funding cycles out there, whether you're getting it from state or transit or federal level, you've got to find different ways to adapt to those cycles and change as those cycles grow. You can also think about seeking out several smaller grants, so trying to make it so that you're avoiding relying on 100% of your funding coming from an FTA grant or a state grant, but seek out smaller grants like community grants, state funding, smaller grants, different foundational grants that might be out there. You know your communities, and that's the best place to tap into them. An example I'd like to share is a community that we recently worked with at Project Action. They do a travel training program that specifically targets older adults, and they've been able to receive 80% of the funding for their program from their state highway administration. And that's largely been due to pretty innovative and great forward-thinking staff who take the crash statistics involving senior drivers, and as long as those statistics kind of trend downward, they make the case for continued funding of their program, because they make the case that, look, our program's taking senior drivers off the road, putting them into fixed route, keeping their independence. They're not driving. The crash statistics in various counties have gone down, and they are able to take some of the credit for that. So that's just one brief example of thinking outside of the box when it comes to looking for different and kind of unique and creative ways to keep your programs going. The next really important part is community buy-in. It's a large building block for any program. Probably that first block of building something really starts with getting people to buy into this idea of travel training and the work you're doing. The work you do is important to the community, so you want to be able to show people why is it important. Have, for lack of a better term, have kind of that elevator speech at the ready. So if you run into some important person or a community stakeholder, you can tell them what it is you do, why it matters, and why they should care about it. You can tell this and show it and measure it in numbers and dollars, and we'll get into that shortly. You can attend community outreach events, public meetings, board meetings, meet with stakeholders and decision makers, those local leaders. In a perfect world, at least I like to think, anywhere that public transportation goes is a place that should be interested in travel training. So whether that's a business, a church, a senior center, hospital, employment place, place where people work, or medical places, in a perfect world there would be that connection. But in the meantime, you know your communities, the stakeholders out there, your leaders have that reason why people should know the why in what you do and why what you do is important. Another best practice in trying to get community buy-in is to, if you're able to, bring someone you've trained, one of your students or your trainees, bring them to a public meeting with you or an outreach event. Looking at someone who's been trained is really putting a face to your program, and a 4-sentence testimonial of how your program has helped change their life for the better can probably do more than the director of your program can in a 30-minute presentation. Because what are people going to take away from, a presentation, which certainly would be great because, again, we have dedicated people on the webinar, but, really taking somebody who, has benefited from this and summing it up with, I used to stay home and now I have a job and now I go to the movies. I mean, that's the takeaway that the community will take away from any interaction with the people that you have trained. Recruiting letters of support, volunteers, office space, really this is where you can get creative too. Anything can really be used as a local match. So if you have a small agency and you just hired a travel trainer and you have no space for them at your office, well, see if there's a sister agency or someone in the community, a school or a college, maybe a county government space that's willing to say, hey, we've got an extra cubicle or we've got an extra computer and we'd like to support your program. Also, make sure to adapt to the change in the human services and transportation industries. So the last slide addressed adapting to change in funding streams, but there's a lot of other things that can change over a period of time, including local leadership, who's in office, what the priorities of the community are at any given moment. And if you're a program manager or a director, this is another great place to tap into your travel trainers. So, they're the ones out there who know how to plan for changes. They've had that experience being at a bus stop and, the bus doesn't come, so they've got to make that change, or, something happens with a client and they've got to make an emergency preparedness change. So they have that just natural experience. So if you're a manager, utilize their expertise to help you build those connections in the community and get that support. And going along those lines of building support, the best way to get word of your program out into the community is through marketing and outreach. And this is a topic that I think could be a whole webinar in in and of itself. But there are many great travel training programs that grow in new ways and unique ways because of clever marketing. And you know, a lot of programs out there might not have a large budget to do things with, but I'll share a couple of things in a moment that you can do with a very tiny budget or grassroots style marketing. So travel training programs naturally market the transit agency in your area. So whether you work for a transit agency or you're training on the vehicles for one, you know, tap into that marketing department to spread the word about your program, because you know, you're giving them, in travel training, most often long-term or even lifelong riders. So that's something that, you know, don't be afraid to ask for some support and, you know, hey, can I have, you know, a small ad on your website, or can I have, you know, a shout out in your conference program, or something where, you know, you can make the case that you're helping bring them riders and you just need something small from them by them promoting your program. Showcase your successes, especially by word of mouth. Get out there, go to events. Maybe you have an outreach coordinator or someone within your agency who's doing the networking and really advertising your program. It's the cheapest way to reach people, so the more kinds of appropriate events that benefit you and are good use of your time, get out there and do the best that you can. Here's a couple examples of some what I like to call grassroots marketing on a tight budget. So a couple of these examples come from travel training programs that have used their limited funds to market their programs to both their trainees and their stakeholders and the community at large, really. So the left-hand column has some free options, so no-cost options, and the right-hand column are some fairly inexpensive options. So again, we could do a whole webinar on just social media, but utilize social media, have some kind of a web presence. It's where people are getting, you know, their information from. You know, if, again, going back to, you know, if you've got a picture, and of course if a trainee signed a waiver, if you can post a picture of, you know, a successful travel training on your Facebook page, the folks who follow you on Twitter, Facebook, and other social media avenues, that's a great way to lend visibility to your program. Web page ads is another good free one if you work for a transit agency. You know, talk about getting some kind of an ad on your homepage that promotes your program. If you work for a school or school system, talk about the same for that larger system. Google Grants is a really great way to get some free advertising, and this is also a very clever way to try to get some of that in-kind match that you might need for grants. Google Grants, if you're a nonprofit, or I think they also do other community-based programs as well. You can apply and basically get those, when you Google something and you see those first couple results that are like the promoted section or the advertisements, Google will take nonprofits and the work that you do and promote your work for free. So whereas, you know, a product would normally have to pay for that, you are eligible to get some help from Google. And again, they'll send you quarterly updates. They'll track how many people are clicking on those ads, and you can use that to brag about your program. You can use the cost that those ads would have normally cost you if you bought them outright as in-kind donations. And what better way to you know, brag a little bit than to say you got accepted into the Google Grant Program. It's really not that hard, and there's a big section on Google's website that will walk you through it for more information. Also, Twitter does something similar, and it's called Twitter Ads for Good. So you can basically apply to have some kind of a clever you know, campaign around social media, and it's the same concept. They'll give you a certain amount of time of totally free ad space, and they'll promote your tweets in addition to giving you that ad space as well. So the right-hand column with the fairly inexpensive ideas here, we have interior transit ads. If you work for a bus company or transportation company and they own their buses, all you're out for a bus ad about your program is the cost of the ad itself. If you're working with programs in another way, or maybe you're a community nonprofit, it might be a little more complicated. But you know, if you've got a small program out there that's part of a transit agency, think about this, especially to promote on the inside of paratransit vehicles in an effort to capture maybe some folks who are riding paratransit. They can look up and see an ad with maybe a success story and your phone number and website for your travel training program. and it gets your word out there as well. You can partner with local media. So this is another clever way that some agencies have been able to get articles written about their program. Some people will invest in a small amount of ad space. Maybe you have a new route or something going on at your agency that you want to promote. So you spend, a low budget ad, $300–500 to run an ad. Well, those local media, those newspapers and the community magazines, they remember who advertises with them. And so if you approach them a month or two later and say, hey, I'd love to have this article run, they're going to remember that. So sometimes putting a little bit of money into your local media, if you don't already have a good relationship with them and have their willingness to promote your program already, that can be a way to kind of get that rolling. And then promotional items, our infamous tchotchkes, are also a great way to think about getting your program out there. And it goes beyond just, stress balls and brochures and things like that. While the brochures are important, try to kind of, and many programs out there have best practices around this too. I'm trying to tie in, well, if I spend money on a promo item, I want it to promote my program, but I also want my trainees to benefit from them. So, to think about things like many of you already probably have, flashlights, bags. The picture here is a reflective drawstring backpack. So, people can be out on the bus, they can put all the things that they need into the backpack. It's reflective, it promotes, safety in nighttime travel training or nighttime bus riding, and it's got your logo on it as well. So there's a number of kind of unique things that you can do to double the impact of the dollars that you're spending. And then a huge part of this, this whole concept of building and growing and hopefully sustaining something really great, is to deliver high quality training. So to continue to grow a program, especially when you're looking for that sustaining piece, it's critical, very critical, to place a large emphasis on delivering high quality training. There's a few ways to do this. First of all is to hire and keep great staff members on your team. A program is only as good as its leaders, and Michael and Robin will elaborate on this, so I won't spend too much time, but you and your staff are the representatives of the concept of travel training in your community. So when someone meets you, you're selling them on this idea, whether it's a stakeholder or just a general community member, maybe the family member of somebody that you're training. So your staff is the face of your program. You're the face of your program. So when you're at those meetings, just keep that in mind. There's no current national certification right now in the travel training field. I know there's some talk about this. We get a lot of questions on that here as well. But there's no one piece of paper that says you're a certified travel trainer. But there's lots of great opportunities out there you can look for in the field to invest in your trainers. And when hiring people, think about the fact that you want to run a professional program to deliver quality and professional training. So it makes sense to hire quality professional trainers. So think about people, if you're just starting a program, think about people from the fields of education, social work, disability studies, and more. And this goes back to that sharing piece. There's lots of great programs on this webinar out there in the country and Canada who would be happy to share kind of what they do around hiring staff and what qualities they look for, what they think competitive salaries are that keep good people. So share information around that too. And remember that when it comes to delivering high quality training, that your trainers are helping people, but they're also dealing with someone's personal safety. So invest in educational opportunities for them to grow and learn and succeed, especially a new trainer. It goes beyond learning just about your system and the safety of your system and where your system goes. So if you have just one trainer in your system, or you're the only trainer, connect with other trainers locally. If you have to drive an hour and learn from someone who's been around for a little bit, that's a good thing. Or you can shadow seasoned travel trainers at your own agency. But definitely connecting people with educational opportunities through conferences, and we'll mention that a little later on as well. And so also to continue to deliver high quality training, you can study the core competencies for travel training. This is a project action document. It's on our website. It was developed some years ago, but it goes into the core competencies for delivering, high-quality professional training, things that travel trainers should keep in mind. Also, document. So, having a paper trail, backing up everything that you do, being able to kind of look at the trends of what your work is about and showcase your successes that way is also good. And those continuing education opportunities we will address in a moment. And the last kind of tenet here of building something, growing something, and keeping it going is to produce strong deliverables, because at the end of the day, however your program is funded, whether it's through a school or a transit agency or community foundation of some sort, those folks are going to want to know what you're doing with the money that they're giving you and how it's really helped people and had an impact. So, keep track of things, document things, and really brag a little bit. You need to produce those strong deliverables to be able to continue to grow. So this is another category where you can look for innovative ways to do fun things. So maybe the work you're doing resulted in an increase in the number of people with disabilities or older adults who have independence. So cite the number of people. You could do a survey, brag a little bit about that. Maybe you can cite a pretty nice reduction in paratransit costs for your transit agency or your local agency. Maybe you can also say, look, there's an increase in ridership, a really big increase or a good size increase over the previous year, and say, well, wow, our travel training program just started last year, and over the course of this last year, here's what we've been able to accomplish. And then you can also, this is an important one as well, and one that people like to see, to cite an increase in the number of students with disabilities that you might be working with who are able to meet their transition-related IEP goals because of the removal of transportation as a barrier. So it's easy to think about adding transportation into a routine, but the language around removing transportation as a barrier, by adding that independence is some good buzzwords. So, and just take note really of all of your successes and brag a little bit. I mentioned when I first started talking that this is something, we're all in this field, we do things, we help people, but it's also important to, stay humble, but brag a little bit about all of the blood, sweat, and tears, for lack of a better term, that you put into growing your program, starting your programs, and the really important work that you do. And there's a way to kind of show what your strong deliverables were. And we have Project Action has a product called the Travel Training Cost Benefit Model. It was developed by Karen Wolf-Brannigan and Michael Wolf-Brannigan. And for those of you who don't know already, it shows in numbers through some simple math. There's a way to put dollar figures on the value of your program and the impact that your program has had to the transit agency, to the individual, and to the community. So just a brief example, benefit to the individual. It takes someone who maybe wasn't employed but had to go to and from a pre-employment center or a day program, paying $3 or $5 each way for paratransit, and they're not having a steady income coming in. So when you think about access to fixed route public transportation, and then they're paying less for their round trip cost. Maybe they're just paying $1 each way instead of $3 or $5. And because they can ride the bus, they've learned to go somewhere and they've been able to get a job, and now they have a salary coming in. So that's a benefit to the individual. It goes into other examples to the transit agency and the community as well. So I have the link here in the slide for anybody who's interested in more information, but it's definitely something to kind of play around with, and through putting that work in, you'll be able to have a statistic to cite to your leaders or stakeholders about, well, last year we saved an average of, whatever that might be for you. So it's a simple model and one that can really benefit you and kind of help with those bragging points a little bit when you need them. So I would now like to turn it over to Michael Vandekreek for the next part.
Thank you so much, Julie. This is Michael Vandekreek, and I'm the Manager of Mobility Management at the RTA in Chicago. In this role, I manage our travel training program, our mobility management activities, and I coordinate the activities of our advisory committee for people with disabilities, and we call it the RTA Transit Access Advisory Committee here at RTA. I am so very happy to be presenting as part of this webinar today. I started out my transit career as a travel trainer, and after being promoted into the management position, I still see travel training as my passion in this industry. And I'm also excited that I get to work on travel training from a local perspective as well as a national perspective as being a board member of ATI. So I hope that people get something out of what I have to present today. Let me first start by talking a little bit about the RTA and what we do here so you can get some context behind what I'm going to talk about. The RTA serves the city of Chicago and 6 surrounding counties. We have urban setting, obviously in Chicago, suburban settings, and some rural areas out in the farther out areas of our region. And as many of you might imagine, that poses some challenge to the travel trainers because they have to be proficient in providing travel training in both urban and rural settings. And it's very different depending on where you're at, the frequency of buses, and so it really is important when you're in a situation like this that you are really up on your core competencies in travel training. RTA is the 3rd largest public transportation system in North America. We provide over 2 million rides a day. And our region as a whole serves 8.3 million, has a population of 8.3 million people. We have 2,468 buses, 2,210 rail cars, 410 paratransit vehicles, 694 van and pool vehicles. So as you can see, we're a really large system. And that poses different challenges and benefits for our trainees that are participants of our program. So I want to first talk a little bit about the structure of our travel training program and the history of our structure. We started out in early 90s, providing travel training. And from 1990 approximately through 2005, we contracted out all of our travel training to social service agencies that at the time the ADA, right after the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law, they were the advocates in this area, the agencies that advocated for the inclusion of people with disabilities on public transportation. So we contracted out our services, and we had a 1-tier model where it was really just a trip-by-trip type of training program. In late 2005, early 2006, we decided to bring our program in-house. And the reason we did that was because we felt that even though a contractor model is a wonderful way to go, we found that because we were using multiple contractors, we wanted to get some more consistency in our program practices, our documentation, our waiting list procedures. And by having it all brought in-house, we were able to achieve some of those consistencies. And we also moved to at that time to a 2-tier model. We went from just providing just a more trip-by-trip specific training to also adding a tier where we did more of an orientation program for folks who didn't need the more intensive trip-by-trip training. We found that there's people who just needed a brief orientation to the system, and that was enough to get them riding, and so we added that tier. And during this time period, we grew from 2 staff members that we started in 2006 in-house up to 5 staff members by 2011. And I'll talk more in a little bit about how we had some of that program growth in staff. In 2012 through the present, we implemented a 3rd tier to our approach in travel training. And what we added, and it's been very beneficial to our program, and so I recommend this highly, is we added a group training component where we go to agencies in the community that serve people with disabilities and older adults to do presentations on the accessibility of public transportation and teach them about trip safety, travel safety, about trip planning, reading maps, reading schedules in a group type setting. Why that's important is that it really promotes travel training to large numbers of people all at once, and it also gives you the opportunity to promote your one-on-one training program and recruit people from those presentations in the audience to participate in one-on-one training. And it gets out the word about your program really quickly. So I really recommend that as a model, and it has really been helpful to us in growing our program pretty quickly. And also in the last year, we've grown our staff from 5 people to now we have currently 7 staff members. Today what our program looks like I said, we have a 3-tiered model, and our 3 tiers is our group transit orientation program, where we do outreach to over 500 agencies in our Chicagoland area and ask them if we can come and present to their clients. Then we have our individual transit orientation program, where this is where people who just need a general orientation to the system, we'll take them out and let them practice on a couple of bus routes. We'll orient them to features on buses and trains. And also one of the great things we're able to do in this program is for people who are anxious about boarding and alighting vehicles. We can take them to a bus garage in our system, or to the end of a line on a train station, and let them practice on a parked vehicle so they can build their confidence first before we're going out and actually taking a live bus and train with other folks there watching and letting the trainee feel more confident in what they're doing before they're doing it live. And then also we have a trip training program, and this is our most intensive form of travel training, where we teach people very specific trips they want to go on transit. And we use a progressive feedback approach in this model, where we start sitting next to the trainee, then maybe moving to the back of the bus while they're in the front, and then followed by following the trainee in the car behind their vehicle that they're in. We see the importance of a mobility management approach in our travel training practices here at the RTA in Chicago. And really, we see mobility management as the holistic view of the customer's needs. Before you start doing travel training with someone, it's really important to understand their environment, understand their abilities, understand if they have the ability to read maps and schedules, or understand instructions, or if they have money management skills or behavior modification skills, and all these different unique qualities of each individual. Understanding that from their perspective, and the transit options available in their community, and the accessibility of the path of travel to and from transit. So once you understand all these different areas of an individual's life, then you can start to work with the individual to understand, okay, what are the transportation options in your community that would be useful to you? And let's train you on those models. We don't only train on fixed route anymore in our travel training program. We also will look into if there's a dial-a-ride program in a community that will get someone that last mile from their home to the transit. We'll train them on how to use that dial-a-ride to get to the fixed route, and then maybe completing the trip with a regular bus or a train the rest of the way. So we integrate what's available in the community in our travel training structure. For program funding, I want to touch on this shortly. We're just really lucky here at the RTA that we have a senior staff and board that's really supportive of our travel training initiatives. Currently, 100% of our funding for our travel training program is through RTA general operating budget. So we don't at this point have any grants that are funding our program. It's paid just out of our general agency budget. However, for the first time in 2014, we're looking at tapping into some 5310 funding to start a new program that we want to just test to see if it's something that'll be that'll work in our community. If it works, then great. Then we can decide later if we want to fold that into our agency operating budget or continue to use 5310 funds as they're available. And we want to do a new older adult group training program, because in our area, a lot of our highest growth in ridership in our ADA paratransit area anyways is our older adult population, and so we want to try to find ways to reach that community. So we're going to try to do a group older adult travel training program with some new 5310 dollars. We also want to create a Train the Trainer video series that we'll use to bring to agencies that we're already working with through our group travel orientation program. And it's going to be a series of videos that teaches community agency staff how to train their clients how to use public transportation. So we're also going to tap into funding to try to develop those videos as well in 2014. The most important thing that I think when you're trying to get your program started, or even to continue to sustain your program, is by creating buy-in within your own organization, starting there, and also utilizing the community to help create that buy-in. Travel training is really great PR. We get tons of feedback from our customers through different ways that we solicit that, those testimonials, and we pass on that information to our senior staff, to our board when necessary. We use it in advertising. And the ways that we collect our testimonials from our customers is through satisfaction surveys, quality assurance phone calls, and through follow-up surveys. And I just want to talk about those briefly. When someone completes travel training, we give them a satisfaction survey with a self-addressed stamped envelope to mail it back. They're not required to write in who it is that's doing the survey or the name of their trainer, but I do code the bottom of each of one of my satisfaction surveys so that I can keep track of which trainer was responsible for whoever filled out that actual satisfaction survey. And from satisfaction surveys, we grade our whole process from the intake all the way through the closing process, and ask them to rate each section of the training, and each phase of training, and to get information on how our training went for them. And we get tons of great quotes from those satisfaction surveys that we can use to advertise our program. I also do quality assurance phone calls while people are in training. I'll call them, in the process of training, and I'll ask how it's going. And that really gives us a great way to not only get some instant feedback while it's fresh in their mind, but it also helps me to see that my staff is following through with the training process. I trust my staff, but at the same time, it's really important that you have a mechanism to be able to prove that your staff is out there in the field when you can't see them and actually doing the work, and being able to report back with confidence that everything is going smoothly in your program. And we also do follow-up surveys at 6 months and 1 year, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little while. We use our communications department to pitch stories to our local media so that we can get some good buzz going in our community. And I also pass on all the praise we get from our participants to management staff here at RTA so that we can continue to show our board how important travel training is, not only for the PR for our agency, but how it also touches people's lives. It's also important to be able to demonstrate the financial benefits of the travel training program for your agency. We do that here by trying to calculate what we're saving in potential ADA paratransit costs. So that's a hot topic at our agency, is how much ADA paratransit costs, and I think that's very common across transit in general. Everyone's experiencing that same problem across the country, and how to fund paratransit. So we use that as a way to show how we're beneficial. We use those same dollar figures to determine what we potentially are going to save our agency by doing travel training as a way to sustain our program, to show why it's important and beneficial. So like I had said, we do our post-training follow-up surveys at 6 months and 1 year post-training. And during those survey calls, we talk to the individuals and we ask them how many new trips they're taking on transit that would have otherwise been an ADA paratransit trip if they weren't trained. And from that, we do the math. We take each trip now, the one-way trip that they're taking on the bus or train, and we multiply that by $40, which is what it would cost if it was on paratransit to the agency. And then we multiply that by 52 weeks, and then we get the amount of the annual cost avoidance per person. Then we add up all the people that we do those calls with. We estimate conservatively at this point that we save the region $1.75 million annually in cost avoidance from our ADA paratransit program, which more than pays for our program, obviously. Now, I struggled with this for a long time, with this specific, model of demonstrating my financial benefit. And why I struggled with it is because it was based on self-report from surveying over the phone. I knew there was going to be errors in, what people were reporting. So how I justify that internally is that we only reach about 50% of the people that we've trained in follow-up surveys. So there's already a built-in 50% margin of error. I do not estimate, based on those 50% that we didn't reach, how much they're saving our region in cost avoidance. So I only report on the people we actually talk to. So there's already that 50% that's built in, and so I feel confident that I'm, with that 50% margin of error, that I'm reporting accurately. I talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to touch on a couple of things around how we monitor and report our success. I talked about the quality assurance calls, getting instant feedback from our customers. And I want to just touch on one thing with satisfaction surveys a little bit further, is that we do a 5-point assessment scale. On the left-hand side of the slide kind of gives you the cover page of what our satisfaction survey looks like. I'm happy to share this survey with anyone who wants to contact me afterwards, so you can have a model to build your own. But we rate every phase of our travel training on a 5-point scale. And then we tally up, we keep a spreadsheet of all the responses on this 5-point scale, and then tally up all the responses over the course of a year. And in 2013, you'll see on here that our overall trainer satisfaction rating of just how they like the trainer was 4.98 out of a 5-point scale. And our overall program satisfaction rating was 4.90 out of a 5-point scale. And why that's important is that we can then use those numbers to show our board, our senior staff, of how much people appreciate the work that we're doing. And it gives you something, shows right there, demonstrates really quickly great public relations. I also want to talk quickly about statistical analysis and monitoring trends. It's important, I believe, to keep track of your statistics by quarter. Just keeping track of how many people you're serving per quarter, whatever maybe your funders or your agency feels are important to track by stats. And then writing up summaries on a quarterly basis that justifies any changes or increases or decreases in in the number of people you're serving. We provide this information to our board on a quarterly basis. And it really helps, I believe, me to think about if I see a dip in our services, or if I see a huge increase in the number of people being served, it forces me to really think about what might be going on in my program, and then I can make any changes that are necessary to address those changes. The other thing I want to say really quickly about this is that we find it important, I find it important to really look at what the country is doing around statistical collection. I recently participated in a TCRP study where the researchers that were researching best practices in older adult travel training were telling the TCRP panel members that they don't have stats that they can compare from program to program because everyone across the country is doing it differently. So one of the things that I'm interested in, and I will ask people to contact me afterwards if they want to be involved, is through my work with ATI, I want to try to tap into our members to see how people across the country are collecting stats. And then when we have our conference in August in Portland, the ATI conference will be August 19th to the 21st, quick plug there, in Portland, we can then tell people kind of the results that we got from how people are currently collecting stats, and then maybe come up with some similarities that we can maybe start to track across the country so that we can give more data to researchers in the future for, so they can study our profession. And then lastly, I wanted to address some other important topics for program sustainability. I think it's important that you're just creative with your program to show your clients and loved ones of the clients that we have really good tools to use with their loved ones so that they can learn to use the bus and train. We have I'll tell a quick story that it's a fun one that shows how we just use some creativity. For stranger danger testing, we ask people all the time, about their stranger danger skills, and we ask questions to make sure that they have, good answers for stranger danger. But we've learned over the years that people learn the best answers. Like, what do you do if someone comes up to you? They learn that they're supposed to say, well, I don't talk to them and I walk away. But in practice, you wonder, is this person really going to do that, or are they going to start talking to the stranger? And we had a customer that recently that we questioned whether or not they actually really truly knew stranger danger skills. And so we decided we were going to come up with a creative way to test it. From getting to know this customer, we learned that the customer really loved Beyonce. So we had one of our other trainers who wasn't training that trainee, who was ultimately a stranger then, go be at the bus stop that was planned for that day for the trip, listening to Beyonce and talking about Beyonce, and then to see if we can engage the customer, the trainee in conversation. And it didn't take long for the trainee to agree to go home with the other trainer to listen to some Beyonce. So it was a really creative way to really test in the field, like what are their actual stranger danger skills, and even though they know the right answers, is that really what they would do? And we learned very quickly that that wasn't the case, that they really didn't have the skills that they appeared to have just by talking to them. We also use customized training tools like laminated direction sheets and ID cards, picture books to show landmarks, tailored written reminders of when to get off the bus, any type of tool you can create for your client to help them with learning the bus or train. And we also ask that people that are participating in training practice the sessions they learn before we move on to teaching them new trips. So we teach them a trip, and then we take a break and ask them to practice that trip before we move on to teaching them a second or third trip, just because we want them to show that they're actually going to use the transit that we're teaching them, and that they are actually going to do it independently before we continue dedicating time and resources to the training. We also use technology as a tool in our training. All of our trainers have Samsung tablets and use iPhones. And the reason for that is that we see that it increases productivity. While they're out in the field, they are able to use mapping apps. They don't need to come back in the office, and they can still get their documentation done. We have a paperless process because of our tablets, and they can sign documents right on the tablet with a stylus. And we have a web-based database so that everything can be done from the field. And we also, it's important to think about staff retention. So here at the RTA, we're able to pay slightly above the competitive wage for the profession. And that's really important because it gives you the opportunity to keep staff and avoid the cost of turnover. So we employ bachelor's level professionals here, and most of them are in the social service type field. So we know what social workers get for salary, so we try to just go a little bit above that so that we can maintain our staffing. We also make sure that we train all of our staff to the core competencies that were developed by Easter Seals Project Action, and we use some of those core competencies in the interview process. So we might ask interview questions that speak to the core competencies. And we also look for people that are passionate about training people with disabilities. So that's my presentation for today. On the screen here is my contact information, and there'll, I'm sure, be a way for you guys to get this information if you can't see the slide on the screen. So with that, I'll turn it back to Julie.
All right, and I would like to turn it to Robin Bernardi, who will take the next piece of the webinar.
Great. Thanks, Julie, and thanks, Michael. It's always difficult to follow Michael and his thoroughness, but I'll sure give it a shot. First off, I wanted to absolutely thank Easter Seals Project Action for all of these learning experiences. We always learn a lot from them, so thank you. My name is Robin Bernardi, and I'm the Director of the On the Move program for MTM, Medical Transportation Management, and that includes the travel training programs and some of the in-person assessment programs. Just a little bit briefly about MTM. MTM is focused on transportation management, so travel training is only one part of what MTM does. We're a transportation management company, and we work with folks from a variety of organizations across the country, including public transit agencies, state and county governments, and Medicaid and Medicare and other healthcare providers. We work across the country in 28 states and DC currently, and we serve over 5 million people a year and growing. MTM's travel training program really comes from humble beginnings in Washington, D.C. Through our Medicaid program there, we were talking to a lot of folks who were wanting to ride public transit, but they didn't know how. They wanted to get to their doctor's appointments using the bus and the train because that was the most efficient way for them, but they didn't know how to ride. So we started with 2 travel trainers in that office who taught Medicaid recipients, including folks with disabilities and older adults, how to get to their appointments. And we saw a lot of success with that program, both in increasing independence of the individuals and cost savings for our clients, and also we saw that people were able to get to their appointments on time. So there was a lot of success happening with that program, and we were able to build it out and make it nationwide. So currently, On the Move has 6 travel trainings focused on Medicaid programs and 5 travel training programs focused with public transit agencies. And similar to Michael's program, we have our programs touch train the trainer trainings, group trainings, and one-on-one trainings. And especially with our public transit agencies, we really work with each transit agency to figure out the model that works in their community based on their goals. Some communities solely want one-on-one trainings, while others are looking for an alternate model like a train-the-trainer model that will then serve to provide both for group trainings that will then serve to provide people for one-on-one trainings. What really works, what we found that really works well for travel training models is to put travel training programs and ADA paratransit eligibility programs together as partners, and that really works to funnel the correct people to travel training programs. But in here, I'm going to touch on the theme of my presentation. No matter which model is being used, most of the success of a travel training program is really based around the travel trainers that you have as staff. And I will say that mine are fantastic. But figuring out how to hire the correct staff is really important because people don't typically come into this profession as travel trainers already. A lot of learning to be a travel trainer is learned on the job, on the buses, on the trains, and in the community that you work. But that being said, it really takes a special person to be a travel trainer. So you need people with both the passion for the independence of people with disabilities, as well as the creativity to come up with solutions for teaching somebody their route, as well as the energy to be out and about every day in the heat and the sleet and the snow. So it's definitely not a job for a desk jockey, and it's not a job for somebody who wants people to come to them. You really have to find someone that's okay being out and about all the time. And a lot of these things are not taught, so you really need, when you're hiring somebody, to make sure that you're hiring the right person. I like to say that I can teach somebody how to ride the bus, and I can teach somebody how to teach somebody how to ride the bus, but I can't teach common sense. So some of the skills that we look for in a travel trainer are on the screen now. I'll just touch on a few things like following a strengths-based perspective. And this is really a social work term, but it revolves around looking at the strengths of a person instead of what they can't do. So looking at what they are able to do rather than their diagnosis or what they can't do, and then building upon what they can do. And also you have to find someone that's able to develop rapport quickly with folks. So are they trustworthy? Are they likable? Because they have to develop rapport quickly, not only with the trainees that they're working with, but with their teacher and with their caregiver and with their parents. So when you're hiring somebody, we really think that it's more than just the interview, because the interview doesn't always tell the whole tale. So one way to make a hiring decision is to audition them for the job, going through a lot of the what-if questions that our travel trainers see on a daily basis. So what would you do if the bus didn't come, or the bus was rerouted, or the trainee didn't meet you where they were supposed to, or the trainee refused to get on the bus, or they started talking to the stranger, like Michael's example. So because the travel trainers see difficult and unique situations out and about every single day, we need to hire the right people that are thoughtful all the time in order to make their training successful. We also need to make sure that they fully understand the position. So we like to ride the bus with them and talk about what a day in the life of a travel trainer looks like. At MTM, we really appreciate a group with a diverse skill set and background. There are definitely backgrounds that are more conducive to travel training, things like education, and rec therapy, orientation and mobility, social work. But we have just for example, we have a great travel trainer who used to be a parole officer. And we have another great travel trainer who used to be a code enforcer. So I would urge you not to solely look at somebody's degree when you're making a hiring decision. We also find it really helpful to have a diverse group, because if one travel trainer isn't familiar with something, they can surely find somebody who is. For example, I might not be familiar with using TTY software or video phone technology, but I know I can call on our travel trainer who is fluent in sign language for assistance. So once you have this quality staff, once you've hired them, you have to figure out how to retain them. And like I said before, I really think that our travel trainers are the #1 reason why we have quality and successful programs. So one thing is to provide a ladder for them to climb. So learning what employees' goals are and working with them to develop a professional ladder, because everyone's ladder could be different. Some people might want to be the director someday. Some people want to supervise others. Some people want to work on a new project or gain experience. So figure out what that ladder is. Like Michael talked about, it really is important to compensate appropriately. We need to recognize the flexibility of the program and the position and make sure that the employees are salaried if at all possible. Our travel trainers are out at 6 in the morning and sometimes as late at 10 o'clock at night. So it's really important to make sure that their schedules are flexible so that they can meet the needs of their daily lives as well as their work lives. We really think it's important for folks to develop connections with other travel trainers as well. Travel training can be a lonely profession. There's no doubt about it. You're out and about all day, sometimes feeling disconnected from the office and other office needs. So it's important to develop connections with others, both as a learning tool and also to make folks know that they're not alone in this profession. As at NTM, we have regular meetings over the phone, and once in a while we use WebEx technology, so we can use a camera, because sometimes it's just nice to see somebody's face. Also, it's important to encourage continuous education. We try to find educational opportunities wherever we can find them, from places like NAMI, the National Transit Institute, Project Action, CTAA, bicycle and pedestrian advocates, local disability organizations. There's a lot out there to learn, so we need to support that learning effort. And I'll put another plug in there for the Association of Travel Instruction, ATI, because their annual conference is fantastic, both for an educational perspective and also to bond with other travel trainers in the field. As an NTM employee, we're really lucky to have a library of hundreds of courses available to us on our computer, from things like problem-solving strategies to Excel 101 to customer advocacy. And also, NTM has a scholarship program for continued education. So there are, it's important to encourage that continuous education. And then lastly, on retaining quality staff, it's important to support as the need arises. Our travel trainers are out there every day, so they know what they might need, and we need to listen to what those needs are. And one example is in Washington, D.C. with my travel trainers. They ride their bus and the train everywhere they go, and they came to me and said, it would be great if we could have bike share memberships, Capital Bike Share is the local bike share, so we can get to places even more quickly than what the buses and the trains would take us there. So I said, absolutely, I'm going to support them doing their jobs more efficiently every day. So just really let them tell you what might make their jobs easier. Now I can't tell you, unlike Michael's program, that we aren't there yet, but we are transitioning to using smartphones and tablets, and we're going with the Surface Pro tablets for documenting purposes. Like he said, to prevent the travel trainers from having to double document, and being able to document on the go so that they don't have to come into the office all the time. Another example is using Google Voice. You can, from Google, they'll give you a different phone number and have it connected to your cell phone number, and it's in the area code of your choice. So you can still use your personal cell phone number, but you don't have to give out your personal cell phone number. They'll give you a different number. Lots of the folks that we work with don't have a smartphone, but some do. And if they do, we really try and use the tools out there to support them. See things like Ride Scout or the Next Bus technology that your public transit agency might have. See Quick Fix is a great tool to report broken sidewalks or maintenance issues. So being on the know of these apps and technology developments can only benefit our trainees. So next I want to talk a little bit about program sustainability. So to begin with, you really need to find staff that's committed to the ideals and the goals of each program. So we really think that hiring staff that live in the area is an important sustainability factor, because these folks are already familiar with the community and the community partners, with the history and the politics of the area, and the community partners and the community is familiar with them as well. For some programs that we help develop, we go in, we create travel training programs, we build them, staff them, and provide training to the community. And after a certain amount of time, the transit agency then takes over the program. So in those cases, it really is all about community investment and involvement. So building a program that will last long after we leave. And not only is it important for us to develop a solid product that we leave the transit agency with, but we also need to find the community partners that will continue to refer people and continue to keep developing the program after we leave. So these train-the-trainer programs and the train-the-trainer model is really important to sustainability, because even after our contract ends or even after you leave the area, there's still people in the community who have the knowledge to train others. One of the first things that we do in the community is to develop a marketing and outreach program. We're looking at all the potential community partners that might be out there. Not only people that can refer people, but also people that can benefit from a travel training program, folks that can benefit from having more pedestrian and transit riders, folks that can benefit from having just one more accessible transportation resource. So anyone from schools to day programs to transition programs to rehab agencies to government programs, really be creative and thinking about who all can benefit from a travel training program. And then like Julie talked about, developing videos and bookmarks that you can leave in the community, something that people can take home and remember you by, to stay in people's minds when they're thinking about potentially needing a travel training resource or needing another accessible transportation resource. You might provide them with a button or a magnet, something to remember you by. So similar to Michael, I absolutely agree. Documentation is key to quality assurance, to making sure that you have a paper trail and you have all your documentation in a row, because that's so important to have readily available, easy to read, and easy to understand documentation that tells the story of your program's success. You also need to make sure that you have processes in place if there are issues or incidences or emergencies. But if you want to find out how your program is really doing, you need to ask the people that you're training. So we provided quality assurance phone numbers and email addresses that people can provide feedback about the training. And then we also conduct satisfaction surveys with the trainees after their training is complete, so they can give us confidential feedback on our training and trainees. And then follow-up surveys as well are important, so you can make sure that the training that you've provided is still being successfully used. So using all of these methods, we're always evolving and improving our programs. And lastly, we always hear about the negative things about riding public transit. We always hear about the accidents or the late buses or the fare costs going up. But we really need to better promote the positive things, both internally to our staff as well as to the broader public audience. So we need to celebrate that success. You need to tell the story of the person who couldn't keep their job because they didn't have reliable transportation, but now they're successfully employed. Or the person who was sitting at home because they didn't know how to ride the bus, and now they're going to community education classes, and to the rec center, and to the library, and to the coffee shop. So you need to celebrate the success the successes that you're having in videos and newsletters and newspapers, using social media, having the transit agency promoted on the website or elsewhere. And have those stories really displayed so that everyone can be proud of the work that they do. Because in the end, the program success and sustainability of the program is all tied to these stories of increased independence and the numbers that follow them. So celebrate that success. Now I'll go ahead and turn it back to Julie.
Thanks, Robin, and thank you, Michael and Robin, for all the great information as well. I just wanted to briefly touch, and then we'll open the phones and the chat box here up for questions from those who are on the webinar. I just wanted to briefly touch on a few resources. You heard Robin and Michael both mention the Association of Travel Instruction, or the ATI conference that's coming up in August. There's a couple of great travel instruction resources though. The websites are here. There's ATI. And there's also the Consortium for the Educational Advancement of Travel Instruction. They just had a great conference that was held earlier this month in Pittsburgh. So for those of you who are looking for continuing education opportunities, looking at connecting with other travel trainers, if you've never attended an ATI conference, now's a good time to maybe think about planning for those learning and networking opportunities in August. And also, just wanted to mention some of the project action resources that we have for travel trainers and people in the field. We have an online global travel training community. It's kind of like a forum where, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, you can post questions and post resources. If you have a question, you can go on there and, for example, say, hey, I need sample forms of job descriptions. I'm looking at hiring a trainer. People can reply and share things with you, and it's a great way to connect with other people in this field all around, I believe, Canada and the United States. We also have an Introduction to Travel Training workshop that we offer. For those of you who don't know, it's a 3-day workshop where we teach travel trainers the skills they need to be able to go back into their communities and be able to train people either in one-on-one or group settings or train the trainers. So for new staff to your programs, or if you're a new staff yourself, this is a great opportunity to be able to attend one of these workshops, and we try to hold them around the country about 4 times a year. Our next one is kind of unique in nature. It's next month in May, and we're hosting it in North Adams, Massachusetts, because it's a small town and we are piloting our small urban and rural introduction to travel training. So particularly if you're a trainer who's interested in or is in a community that you have some unique rural challenges or small urban challenges and you train on smaller systems, there's more information on this training on our website. And we also have an upcoming course that starts in May as well. It's Fundamentals of Travel Training Administration. It's an online course that helps administrators, program managers, anyone kind of administering a travel training program will equip you with those skills. And it's a great online course. And we also offer different teams. Right now we work with accessible transportation support teams. So if in your travel training or your mobility management work you have questions, you can always come to us for technical support and for technical assistance. However, there are a few times each year where we accept teams that we work with that have kind of a specific goal in mind. For example, somebody might want to develop their own travel training curriculum, and we'll work with you in developing the goals that you set forth. Then there's always our distance learning events, webinars like today, and different audio conferences as well. So just a couple of resources to keep in mind as you move forward. So I'd like to turn it back over to Christian Barrico for questions and answers.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks everyone for those great presentations. We've got a few minutes left today, and we'd love to take some questions, and our presenters will do their best to answer them for you. We can take questions over the chat, and you can also call in with them by pressing star and then 0 on your phone. Star and then 1, sorry. And we'll just give people a few minutes to call in.
Again, that is star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. Your first question comes from the line of Ricky.
Yes, how's everyone doing? I'm at Votran down in Daytona Beach, and I want to start a travel training program, but I just want to know how hard is it to start from scratch?
All right, this is Julie. I think this is probably a good question for both Robin and Michael. Michael, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. Well, I think the hardest part is going to be finding the funding. That's I'm lucky to have an agency that funds it entirely, but I hear from people across the country saying that that's always the most difficult part is finding, funding to start the program through. Under MAP 21, there's 5310 funds that you'd have to check in with your local, whoever is the designated agency that has those funds available, seeing if that would be a potential funding option, or if you can find grants, as Julie talked about with Google Grants, or that might be a place to start as well. And then I think after that is getting the word out about your program, is really starting to talk about your program in the community, finding some champions in your community that can really help carry the message about travel training back to their clients, back to others in the community that they know. So, it takes some work. It's once you start showing success in travel training, it will grow quickly through word of mouth. But it's just those initial steps of getting the word out and getting funding that are going to be the most challenging. And I really encourage you to really tap into resources with Easterfield's Project Action, because they have tons of resources that can help you start programs, funding opportunity, kind of resources that give, suggestions on all those types of topics. Hope that helps a little bit.
And Ricky, this is Robin. Just to follow what Michael said, past the funding and past the marketing, I think the next most important thing is the staffing. So to make sure that the folks that you have providing travel training and providing the marketing are fully trained, like Michael talked about, to the core competencies of travel training, and that you have proper documentation and processes in place so that it can be a successful program.
Okay, so I can't just start with the staff that I have on my customer service team to start just training people how to ride the bus.
Well, I think it would depend. This is Michael again. I think it would depend if those folks really have the competencies to work with people with disabilities and older adults. I think you could, if those people understand the different needs of people with different types of disabilities. I think knowing how to gauge someone, for example, that has an intellectual disability, knowing how to gauge if they're traveling safety, if they're understanding all the tasks that would be needed to complete a trip on buses and trains. They have the ability to know how to pay their transit fare. So I think if you have good people in your customer service department that understand the needs of people with disabilities and have a passion for training folks with disabilities, I think you could start with the people you have if they have those skills.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
And this is Julie. Ricky, I thought I'd also add, similar to what Michael just said, there are some really great programs out there that have grown staff. Robin mentioned that ladder of opportunity earlier, and investing in staff based on what they'd like to achieve. I do know of a few programs that have taken staff who might have started out as a customer service representative, but they were in school to learn something kind of related to social work or travel training, and they invested in them, and they eventually became travel trainers. And a lot of those examples, they sent people to our Introduction to Travel Training courses, which, for those of you who don't know, we provide free training. We cover the cost of the hotel lodging as well currently. So it's really just your travel there. And it's just not another plug for our training here, but that's really a great event where if one of your staff is interested in that, you can invest in them with those educational opportunities. And to speak to customer service representatives maybe getting promoted or moved into a travel training position, they really know your system very, very well. They're the ones on the call, telling people bus information, train information. So it's when folks have those skills, like Michael said, if they can learn the competencies, attend trainings, build those skills, it's a great place to take somebody from within your agency. They not only know your agency, but they know the community, they know the bus system, and so there are programs that have done that quite well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Your next question comes from Brittany.
Hi, my name is Brittany Higgins, and I'm the travel trainer with the Central Midlands Transit. I've been here for about 7 months, and we've gone through a lot of transition over, I would say, probably since 2012. I'm guessing, well, let me say that my main concern is assessment for the competency in the person that I'm training, because a lot of times what I've encountered so far is that the people with disabilities that I've trained, they say, okay, I've got it. It's, they no longer have motivation to go back out again and practice it. So while I have those numbers to say, yes, I've done the training, I want to ensure quality. And I've realized through this webinar that I probably could develop some surveys and things to do that. Are there any other suggestions that could ensure that? Does that make sense?
This is Michael. I can just say that I think it's great to do follow-up with your customers and talk to them after they're done with training. You know, call them, you know, a couple months after training. Some systems do it at 1 month after. You know, we do 6 months and 1 year after for kind of that long-term connection with our clients, or our trainees as we call them, and really just talk to them about using the system after training. And if they're, you know, maybe they're still scared and they might have learned, but they, you know, end of training, they look like they're confident, but at some level they're still scared, so that you can always, as you're talking to them ongoing after training, you can offer more training if they're not using the system. So that's one tool that you can utilize to try to, you know, continue people using buses and trains. And, you know, but there are going to be some people that aren't going to, you know, follow through with training, and I think that's, you know, there's going to be a percentage of people that are just not going to ride after training is over with, but that's my input on that, I think.
And I noticed too that a lot of the trainings that I do come in a group format, and the orientation mode, I suppose you could say, that was mentioned earlier, because of the fact that our system as a whole needs more publicity. And how would I assess in those kinds of situations as far as just letting people know what services are available and how they can be used and things of that nature?
Does that make sense?
I think are you asking that in the group training, when you're finished with group training, that you don't know if people understand the resources that are available? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I guess a survey would be the most efficient tool, I suppose. But my concern with surveys is that I know that people get ballot fatigue, or they're just ready to get out of there, so they don't always give you the most honest response. But I guess I could gauge how effective it is as well by the number of referrals I get to other organizations after giving the group presentations to staff members at, you know, independent living centers or different things like that. Because I can't really, I haven't really figured out any other method aside from maybe calling those different organizations and getting their individual feedback as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is Robin. I will say that, you know, for group presentations and group trainings, I think it's not always instantaneous that you get feedback. You know, sometimes it takes us 2 or 3 times of going to the same place to tell maybe even the same staff the information before it clicks and before they put two and two together and say, yep, I'm going to refer people. So it definitely absolutely takes time. Perhaps you could give them, a brochure or a button or a magnet or something that they can take with them and maybe have on their desk so that they'll keep you in mind when they might need you as a resource.
Okay. Thank you. That helps.
And we've got a couple good questions on the chat here, so I'm just going to take a moment to ask those. First one is from Christina, and it's directed towards Michael and Robin. How many hours of instruction would you say do your customers receive on average?
Robin, do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Sure. Well, it definitely absolutely depends on the individual and their experience riding public transit beforehand and their experiences out in the community. Sometimes we work with somebody for 2 days and they say, we're done, leave me alone, I can do this by myself, and you agree with that assessment. And other times, we worked with somebody for 4 months, 4 months at a stretch, almost every single morning and afternoon before we were confident in letting her ride independently and before she was confident in herself. So it definitely absolutely depends on their not only their skills and abilities but their experiences. I would say perhaps an average of between 20 and 25 hours per person.
And that would be similar to how it goes in Chicago too. I mean, we have folks that maybe we do 2 sessions of 2 hours each, and that's enough for them because they just needed an orientation to the system, and that's all they really needed. Whereas other people, they need to practice specific trips, and we might do 5 weeks on just one trip, and they want to learn 3 different trips. So in the long run, we're spending 80 hours with that one with that individual. So it really varies. And again, just like Robin said, and the same thing with us is that we train to the person's individual needs. So everyone's different, and it's going to take a different amount of time depending on their skill sets that they already have.
All right, thank you. And I'll just we are almost at the end of our time. So Michael and Robin, if you wouldn't mind answering just a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up soon. We have another one from Valerie on the chat, and Valerie's writing from Pender County, North Carolina. From a demand response system. And in July, they plan to receive their first time 5310 grant for a new service route. And they're going to be starting slow with 2 days a week. She's asking if you have any suggestions on adjusting to the fixed route for persons with disabilities being independent at stops and transfers.
I don't know if I understood the question. I'm sorry. Could you? Oh,
sure. Sorry, I'll clarify. It's program that is going to be introducing a fixed route and is currently running just demand response. So she's asking if you have any tips or suggestions for how to work with customers who are not accustomed to being independent at stops or transfers where they might be waiting for another vehicle.
I think this really speaks just the core of travel training, that how important it is just to get to know the individual and spend some time with them. It's going to be different from person to person, again, depending on what their disability is, what their functional ability is, if they have an intellectual disability, if they don't. It's really going to be so different from person to person. So it's really important from my perspective to get to know each individual and go out and practice with them and observe it. So observe what it's like for them to wait, and if you're noticing that they're getting antsy or wandering off or whatever it is that you're observing is training to whatever that is. So if you're noticing something that is not going to be helpful to that individual, giving them some skills that would be helpful, based on your observation.
And also, if you're available to do group presentations to, perhaps some schools or transition areas or job training facilities, giving some information to folks on the fixed route and on the stops. Also, to make sure that the information at the bus stops and at the transfer stations are clear, are accessible, are easy to read and easy to understand, making sure that the stops are, safe, that they're well lit, that somebody can cross the street safely, things like that to better prepare people.
All right. Thank you, Robin and Michael. Stephanie, do we have any more questions on the phone?
We do have one additional question from Shannon. Shannon, your line is open.
Actually, this is Marshall Burns from Corpus Christi, RTA. I had two questions. My first one being, Michael, I believe that you had discussed some software that y'all use with tablets and iPhones so that y'all can document, travel trainees can document trainers' progress on the go. What type of devices and software are y'all utilizing for that process?
Well, we developed our own database. We don't have actually an off-the-shelf type of product right now. Our internal IT department developed a database that's a web-based database. They did it in a SQL server. I'm not an IT person, so I'm not going to be really helpful in this area, but I can always get you more information if you email me. But it was an in-house developed, web-based database that met the needs of us. So we have fields for all the demographic information, and that also track, what program they're in, and then also has different, you can add sessions to take notes in the field. And all of our trainers have tablets that are Windows-based tablets. We use a Samsung model, but there's tons of, with all the technology that's out there today, there's tons of, tablets, that have like Windows environment that you can utilize to, as long as there's a web portal, you can get into a web-based database. So that's what we use here. But I can get you, try to get you more information if you want to email me afterwards.
And I might go ahead and do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My next question would be, a lot of times I hold group travel trainings where I work with different schools or sometimes community centers for older adults, et cetera, et cetera. And my justification for group training, of course, is that it's a good way to orient people to the system. And of course, I see results if I do get travel trainees referred to me for individualized travel training. But sometimes people might not need that individualized travel training. They might go ahead and get out on their own after that group training. They just might need that, like y'all say, that one-on-one, that little orientation to the system before they, they can really feel comfortable with using it. My question is if y'all have done group training similar to this, and what is a good follow-up mechanism for that? Possibly maybe getting their contact information from all the attendees and maybe sending out a survey, or what have y'all seen that's that has shown to get the most out of your group trainings? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Kind of got tongue-tied there. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. For us in Chicago, and Robin, you might want to speak to this too, but when we're out doing group presentations, we really try to build a relationship with the contact person at the agency that we're presenting at. And then we work with that contact person to really try to have them identify people that would be good participants in a one-on-one program. So it's a way, we don't always get people to come up to us and sign up for training. Sometimes we do, that they would say, hey, I want more training, I want to sign up for one of your one-on-one programs. But really we get a lot from just establishing a relationship with the staff at the agencies that we do these presentations at, and again ask them to refer people that would be good candidates. And it's a good way to get in that way. That's how we do it here.
Or go ahead, I'm sorry.
Nope, I just agree with everything Michael said. Go ahead.
I just had one, I guess my other question, I didn't really state it clearly, was whenever you do have group trainings, how can you tell for the people who might not need that individualized travel training whether the group training has been effective with them being able to utilize public transportation for more of their trips?
We really don't know from group training what someone's ability is going to be on fixed route. We see our group training as really just an orientation so that people can get their appetite, whetted for ongoing training. So we see it as an advertising mechanism. We do obviously get some, people do learn skills from the training, and we hope that people that don't need much will get enough out of those to use transit. But we really see the one-on-one training as the way that people are truly going to be using the system. And so, and anytime we have a new customer, we always do a personalized assessment of each individual before they start training to know what they're going to need to learn. So that's how we go about it here.
All right. So so y'all, okay, that helps me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That brings us to the end of our call time. So thank you so much, Robin and Michael, for those fantastic presentations. Thank you, Julie. And also thank you, everyone, for those great questions. That was very informative. As just a reminder, in case you didn't get your question answered, you can email us at webinars@easterseals.com, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. And also, we're going to be making a transcript of this call available in about 30 days' time on our website, and you can also email in a request for that. And we'll also have a recording of the session available. Again, all of that can be accessed by emailing webinars@easterseals.com and asking your question, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Also, I want to thank our captioner and our operator today for making this event possible. And I want to thank everyone for participating. It's a testament to your commitment to accessible transportation. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for participating.